Keenan Allen is probably one of the youngest newly elected Barrie City Councillors. And what I like about him is I saw him at the town hall meeting for Ward 2 just prior to the election of October. And he's an out gay guy. He's coming on my show, and we're going to get into all sorts of things like what's happening with the LGBT community here in Barrie and in Simcoe County. I'm looking forward to Keenan. I hope you are too. Recent midterm elections in the South, that's being the United States, they expected to have a blue wave, but it wasn't really a blue wave. Although the Congress went Democratic, there was a rainbow wave. And the governor of Colorado, who is the first out gay man for governor, and his partner, who is the first man of Colorado, and I thought that was just so cool to hear that happening, and they hugged, and they didn't overdo it, but it was really cool. But there were a lot of folks that identify within the LGBT community that made it to Congress and some in the governorship, so that's great. And in Barrie, we didn't have a blue wave, but we had a bit of a rainbow wave. And my guest tonight is part of that wave, and his name is Keenan Allen, and he is the councillor-elect for Ward 2 for Barrie, going forward into 2019. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. First, I no doubt you must have watched the elections recently and saw all those wonderful, diverse and inclusive politicians come into being, and here you are.
Yeah, I think it's exciting that we've elected first openly gay politician in Barrie, but I think we have a long way to go. If you look at City Council now, it's 9 men, 1 woman, and that's not good enough. I think there's 1 person of color, not good enough. So we have a long way to go here in Barrie, and yeah, it is exciting what happened in the States, but yeah, a lot of work to do here.
Yeah, because considering there's so much anti-gay when you think of Europe and in Russia, anti-Semitism in France, for example, and even within our own province, we did have an LGBT premier in the last premier win, outgoing. And so it's interesting that in Barrie, that's kind of conservative, sort of. So you're like part of you're part of a younger generation, because I remember hearing you at the Ward 2 town hall, and you said there's a generational change coming, but there's more than that. Would you not agree?
Absolutely, yeah. Barrie has been somewhat of a conservative place, but I think that's changing. I grew up here, and growing up in Barrie, I always wanted to leave as soon as I could. Because it felt like that small conservative town. But I went away to university, came back, and Barrie's changed a lot. We're changing even more. We have 60,000 more people coming into the city over the next 12 years. So the attitudes are shifting. And you're right, it is a generational change, I think. I think a lot of people see an opportunity to get involved and shape the future of our city and be excited about that future and make sure that as a city we live up to our potential, because Barrie has a lot of potential. We're a beautiful place to be, but we have some work to do on some things to make sure we live up fully to that potential. Yeah.
Do you think, why is it important for people to know our sexual preferences? For example, I know you said, I'm an out gay guy, which I thought was fabulous because it encourages so many of us who identify within the LGBTQ community. But do you think there will come a time in your lifetime where we don't have to really, because you don't hear straight politicians coming out and saying, oh, I'm a straight guy, I'm a guy, and I'm a dude, and I just like women, that kind of thing. But yet, for LGBTQ, we sort of have to say, I'm out.
Yeah.
And yet, what you're going to be doing for Ward 2 has nothing to do with your identity within the LGBT community. Would you?
Yeah, I mean, we can dream that we would get to a place where we don't have to come out and be explicit about who we are, and that people just accept whoever we are, no matter who we love. but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
And so I think it is important that as an LGBTQ person, that I'm open about it, that I'm honest about it, and that I show people that it's possible to be open about who you are. And I think representation really matters. Having people who look and who are like you, representing you at a political level is really important. So yes, we've made this one step, but again, like I said, we need more women involved in politics. We need to make sure trans people are more included in the political system and racialized communities as well, because Barrie's council's looking pretty white right now.
White because those are the individuals, the folks that went into city politics. I know in Ward 8 there was a woman of color, Shelley Skinner, and I think she got like 500 votes. So that's pretty impressive, I would think.
Very encouraging.
So there was that, but you're right. I do agree with you, and it wasn't a catch question. It was just that people like myself, who identify within the, I'm a gay guy. I run a small organization in town here when I'm not on Rogers, and we represent one of the largest LGBTQ organizations north of Toronto, south of Sudbury, the North Bay. So it is important for others within the community to understand that there is representation, there are services available to the LGBT community. So I do agree with you that you're announcing where you stand in terms of within the LGBTQ is important, because people like myself can come to you, because I work in Ward 2, can say, hey, Mr. Councillor, what about this and that, you know?
Absolutely.
So what do you see your vision, because I know you come from a Green Party background, and you're still a member, and so you are a member, and one of your concerns in that piece was poverty and homelessness, which Ward 2 has a lot of. Are you? And I know that you supported housing for low income and that kind of thing. What do you see going into this new city council, bringing those issues that you see in Ward 2, that I see in Ward 2, and that so many others? How do you plan on looking at ways of improving housing? You say Barrie is the 5th highest housing market in Ontario.
In Canada.
In Canada, sorry. In Canada,
yeah.
Yeah, that's even more.
It's bad, yeah.
That's even more shocking.
Yeah, and I mean, knocking on doors during the election, that was the #1 issue that came up at the doors. People are really worried about it. A lot of people don't even feel safe going downtown Barrie, which they should feel safe, because it is a safe place. We're the 2nd safest municipality in the whole country. Right. So we are still a safe place, but that perception is there, and the homelessness issue, the addictions issues are there. And I think we forget sometimes that politics is actually about real people's lives, and the decisions that we make can actually end up being a life or death decision. You know, winter is coming here in Barrie, and it can be pretty frosty out there. And I see people sleeping out in doorways in downtown Barrie every night still, and I'm worried about those people. So we need to make sure we have the emergency services in place, so that they have a safe, warm, comfortable place to sleep at night in the winter, but also look at getting to the root of some of those issues. And the housing crisis, like you mentioned, is out of control in this city. 2nd most expensive rental market in Ontario, 5th in the whole country. Our shelters were full over the winter last year, and they had to turn people away. So it's at a crisis point, and that requires some pretty drastic action. We need to build more affordable housing, more social housing. We haven't built a new social housing unit in Barrie through the Barrie Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation since 1997. So it's been 21 years since we've built a new unit through that entity, and it's time to build some new units and start to address that housing crisis.
I understand the average room, just a room, some college folk I know are saying like they're $500, $600, $700 a month for a room.
Yeah, I actually, during the election, I was out knocking on doors on a little residential street in an older neighborhood, and there's a rooming house on that street, owned by some landlord that usually isn't around, and they charge $600 a month for one room, and the conditions in that place are horrible.
Right.
It's scary,
yeah.
And unsafe, and also it attracts crime, and it really isn't good for the fabric of the neighborhood. The neighbors were pretty upset having it there, and that to me points to a lack of leadership from the city, from the province, and from the federal government. We all have to work together as different levels of government to make sure that everyone has a safe and comfortable place to live, or else these predatory landlords, slumlords, are going to take advantage of some of the most vulnerable people in our community, and we can't continue to let that happen.
Where do they go, these homeless people, if not into shelters, if there's no housing? They just don't pick up their luggage and move to another town. They can't get out of town, they have no money. Is there anything that you see within Ward 2? Like, I'm thinking, I don't know, churches that are available, town halls that aren't being, halls that aren't being used during the day, during the evening, where you can put up makeshift cots for the night or something like this. I mean,
and that is happening in some respects. The David Busby Center, they're taking on the work that Out of the Cold Barrie did in years past, which is now defunct. Out of the Cold isn't happening anymore. So David Busby Center is picking up the slack. They are working on a new space on Mulcaster Street that will be able to pick up the slack that Out of the Cold left behind. But right now they're in a temporary location. They are going through a fundraising campaign and they need help. So I want to plug that.
Yes.
Making
I'm
room.
all for plugging David Busby.
Absolutely.
You,
so go to their website, Making Room at 88, Making Room at 88.ca, and you can make a donation because they really need it. Like I said, winter's coming, and literally their lives are at risk because of a lack of services for them right now.
Busby has a new place coming up too for housing on Essa. But it took over the Bars Motel, and I think the city's behind some of that, and so is the province in supporting some short-term housing. I don't know if it's 6-month housing and kitchenettes and that kind of thing, which is a start, but that will only house like 14 or 15 people.
Yeah, it definitely is a good start because it's supportive housing as well, so there will be workers on site to help people who are in particularly vulnerable situations, dealing with addiction, mental illness. So it's a great project, but we need more of it. That's the bottom line, and we need to step up to the plate and actually invest some money in it, in these types of programs, because it's costing us as taxpayers when we don't act. When people are living on the street, they end up in hospital over and over again. The police have to deal with it all the time, arresting the same people, picking them up, they go to jail time and again. So that gets really expensive, and it's actually more cost effective for taxpayers if we make the investments now to get people off the street, find them a safe and decent place to live. That's the approach I want to see us take.
Well, yeah, and it's not just, I don't think, Keenan, it's not just a place to live, but they have to support that place to live. They have to have jobs. They have to have the ability to give back to society in some ways, because many of the homeless, I know some of them come out of CNCC and Benetang, the Central North Correctional Center, arrive in Barrie with no income, no money, sometimes just the clothes on their back, and they land in Barrie at the Barrie bus terminal here in town, downtown, Ward 2. Yeah. And I know there's a few people that are there to greet them and try and give them clothing and direction and some kind of a Tim card to get some coffee and something nutritious. And then there's a Sally Ann on Bayfield, the bottom of Bayfield. But the influx of homelessness, of homeless people, is happening every day. It's just like, it's not stagnant. Yep. The numbers are being added to every day.
For sure. I mean, in Simcoe County too, Barrie has become a hub of social services, and I'd like to see other communities in Simcoe County sort of step up their game and provide some services in their own cities and towns and villages just across the county, because you know what, we do have a lot of services here, but it is putting a strain when other communities say, this isn't our problem, Barrie can deal with it. And that's just not fair.
Yeah.
So we all need to do better, Barrie included, to make sure we're taking care of the most vulnerable. And I know the Busby Centre does do a lot of excellent work meeting people at the bus terminal when they come from Central North Corrections. And the vast majority of those people end up taking a bus to where they were arrested, where they were charged, back home where they have supports, where they have friends and family, where they should be, not just in a strange town where they don't have connections, social connections. So that work is happening, but we have a lot more to do.
How influential are you going to be to move, because the Allendale hub, where the city has plans, I don't know if they're fixed. It seems like it's going to move.
Yeah, it's on hold for now.
Yeah.
We are waiting to see if there's some provincial funding available. So we'll see what happens with that. But
I think the concept is great. I mean, the St. Lawrence type concept. And I know I was at a town hall meeting about the Allendale folks not wanting the hub to go there, but it's virtually almost there now, except for the bus line going in. But a lot of the Allendale folks were saying the same thing that some of Ward 2 folks are saying is, oh, so now the issue is going to move from downtown, it's going to creep along Lakeshore, and many are going to end up in the Allendale area, which doesn't resolve the problem, because in the organization I work for, during the day there are homeless. We have clients who are homeless, and it breaks our hearts to not be able to provide shelter. And sometimes we put them up locally overnight for 2 or 3 nights in a hotel that isn't really the best hotel, but it's shelter, and it's out of the cold, as you say. But still, we're looking. Our organization, anyway, is looking to councillors like yourself and the mayor to give us something that we can hang on to in terms of brainstorming us all together and going and bringing these organizations together. So I hope once you're in state, in council, after what, December 3rd?
Yes, it's the swearing-in ceremony.
Yeah, good. So also, speaking of downtown and everything else, and you touched on a little bit and I just don't want to dwell on it too much, other than to say, with the opioid crisis, there are still people in the downtown area, mostly in Ward 2, I think, mostly. Is Milligan's Pond Ward 2?
It is.
Yes, yeah.
It is.
Now that the government has redirected its efforts, and now they're calling them consumption treatment services, and there's 21 of them in the province, no new ones yet, and we're wondering if there will be one. And I know there were 5 organizations that were going to try and get an OPS site, that was called at the time an overdose prevention site. There's been a lot of pushback, and it's disheartening, because you wonder, does politics come before people? And I know from hearing you at a town ward meeting at 5 Points, you definitely became very clear that you were a people before politics politician. So this has not gone away. Yeah. We're looking to City Council for direction in terms of, if not in Barrie, then how do you address the addiction issues that the opioid crisis has caused, where constituents are actually dying on the streets of Barrie? I'm sure that's in your mind.
Absolutely.
And it's going to come up in City Council.
It's top of mind. When people are literally dying on our streets because of a lack of addiction services, that is exactly what we need to be dealing with at a political level, because politics is about people's lives. But I'm disappointed that this issue has become this polarized debate, because it doesn't need to be. When we look at the experts, when we look at the evidence and studies around overdose prevention, we know that overdose prevention sites work, they save lives, but it also makes it more likely, 30 to 35% more likely, that people will access addiction and mental health services. I met with business owners, homeowners in Ward 2 who are finding needles in their front yards, in front of their business, in city parks like Milligan's Pond. I did a cleanup there this fall and personally picked up dozens of needles, just exposed needles in this park, and that's unacceptable. So we need to make sure that we're working on solutions together to actually address this crisis, instead of using this as a political football to sort of divide people. I think we need to come together and actually find solutions, and there are a lot of really hardworking people and great organizations working on this issue already, like the Gilbert Center, like the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, and they have an opioid strategy where one of the pillars is harm reduction, and we can't just take away one of the pillars. That's what a pillar is. It's the foundation of the strategy. So I think we need to continue to pressure the provincial government, and then work as a city to make sure every possible solution is implemented.
So I've been following some local and federal politicians here in town who are who bring a case, but the case seems to reflect more on the dollars, the businesses, the millions of dollars that this is going to bring in, and it's costing this, and then to throw in the Santa Claus parade is a bit.
It's a fear tactic.
Yeah, but you lose the sense of people are dying. Yeah. Santa Claus parade, yes. Lots of businesses are investing millions of dollars in want to invest or will be investing millions of dollars, but people are dying. Yeah. So that's the issue here, is that people are dying, not how much things are going to cost or how many dollars are going into, for example, Ward 2, because a lot of the businesses that were highlighted in one of the tweets was all in Ward 2, including the Santa Claus parade. I just felt that we look to politicians to be much more empathetic and much more sensitive, even though they may not agree, but much more sensitive, because behind every homeless person, there could be a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, a cousin, an uncle, an aunt, friends. Most homeless people that I've met, I haven't met a lot, but I have met a few through our clients, and they don't want to be homeless.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But addiction has forced them out of jobs, out of housing, away from family in some cases.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that we have two different approaches here demonstrated. There's the approach based on fear, and then there's an approach based on compassion. And we need to choose as a city, as a country, as a province, which approach we're going to take. And I'm always on the side of compassion. These are people who are members of our community, who are suffering and they need help. And so we need to choose compassion. But I also understand the financial argument. But doing nothing about the opioid crisis is not going to help businesses in the city. Businesses are already worried, and I know a lot of businesses are in support of actions to solve the opioid crisis because they're sick of finding needles. They're sick of their customers coming downtown Barrie and not feeling safe because they see someone shooting up in an alleyway. So there's a financial case to be made for these types of services. Also the cost and burden on our healthcare system of people overdosing on our streets. I don't like the fact that ambulances, firefighters, and police are constantly being tied up with this when there are alternatives to make sure that people are safe when they are using. So you know what, they can try to make these financial arguments, but it actually doesn't make sense. It's more of a short-sighted financial argument, but we need to look at the real true cost, and then the human cost is the number one. So yeah, it's that choice between compassion and fear, and I think we need to choose compassion.
Ward 2 is probably the largest ward in Barrie. So it has probably the largest number of issues, given it's the largest ward. So that's a daunting task, I'm thinking, and you're just a young man going into this. but the vigor and the excitement that you bring to it is exciting for me as someone who works in Ward 2. I don't live in Ward 2. I live across the lake. But there's not just the opioid crisis that affecting Ward 2. There's also there's street workers that have a living to make, but they're also so that's another thing that's happening downtown. What do you feel that you as a councillor elect, but soon to be a councillor going into 2019? How does it work? How do you bring issues like that to City Council in letter form, or do you just, like, I don't know how it works, but maybe you do, or more than I do. And but how does a councillor bring an issue that's very concerning to them in their ward that isn't concerning to somebody who doesn't have homeless problems, who doesn't have opioid problems?
Right.
How do you affect change then if you're one out of 10 councillors? Nine councillors?
Yeah, 10 councillors and then the mayor.
And
so
then the
there's
mayor.
11 votes on council, and you need 6 votes to get anything done. So that's
you
the
need
reality.
6 on, so every council would have to have 6. So there's some networking, I'm gathering, has
Absolutely,
to be done.
building those relationships and working together to solve these challenges, because yes, homelessness mostly exists in Ward 2 downtown, but it affects all of us across the city in terms of our tax dollars and community members suffering. So there's an argument to be made that it will help all of us if we can solve these challenges. And I think it takes leadership. It takes bringing people together in the community, first and foremost, our neighbors getting together, talking about what these issues are, talking about what are the solutions, people who are already working on these issues, like different agencies and services, getting them together, bringing people together in the process to work on the issues together. I think that's how you get it done. I'm hopeful that this council is going to be very open-minded and forward-thinking. We elected 6 new councillors out of 10, so there's a lot of energy and passion there. So I'm excited to work with them, and I think we're going to do a lot of good for the city.
Good. We'll be right back with Keenan and Aylwin after break. Back with Keenan Allen, who is a councillor-elect for the Ward 2 for Barrie City Council, part of a quasi-rainbow wave that happened in Barrie. And we've been talking about diversity, inclusivity, and so on and so forth. And so we're going to continue chatting to Keenan. So we've been talking all about Ward 2, and that is very important because you live in Ward 2. Have you always lived in Ward 2?
No,
I mean, not always, but since you've moved back, because you were away.
Yeah. I grew up in the Sunnydale Park area, but went to elementary school and high school in Ward 2 at Prince of Wales Public School and Barrie Central Collegiate. Now closed and piles of rubble on the ground, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah. Except the tower where there's an endangered bird that's nested there or something.
That's right, yeah, they kept the chimney for the chimney swift, migrating birds. So,
wow.
Yeah, very cool.
Are they going to leave it?
I think so, I think they're going to incorporate it into the new development.
The Y is going in there, I think, or is it the Y? Or
there's a couple of exciting things happening there.
Anyway, so you were away in university for a number of years. You came back to Barrie, moved downtown, and decided, what brought you to the point, because I know you were with the Green Party, you ran federally. Provincially, sorry, you ran provincially. What kept you so intrigued to remain in the political scene? As opposed to, I don't know, getting a job in a high-price law office or something.
Well, I've always wanted to make a positive impact in the community, but the day that I decided to actually get involved in politics more formally was the day that Donald Trump got elected. I just knew I couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore. I had to get involved. More young people have to get involved in politics and shape our future. So that was the big motivator for me to actually jump into formal politics. But I've always been passionate about making a difference. And I volunteer a lot in the community. I'm involved with the group that's expanding community gardens in Barrie. So that's a passion of mine, and hopefully we'll continue that work as councillor.
That's a great idea, because Unity Market is one of those that's in Ward 2 that did have a community garden, I think, right across the street on whatever that street is. Toronto Street.
Yeah.
Toronto Street, maybe? Yeah, Toronto Street. Yeah. Yeah. So are you looking at more green space in the downtown area in Ward 2? Like,
Yeah,
doesn't seem to be a lot of green space.
We're pretty good. Like we have the whole waterfront is a fantastic, beautiful green park space. We've got Queen's Park. So we have a lot of great spaces, but I'd like to see us utilize them in new and creative ways, like community gardens. So Queen's Park in Ward 2 is actually one of the proposed sites for a community garden. It's not going to be the new garden that goes in next year, but we're doing like 4 or 5 new gardens over the next couple of years. So Queen's Park could end up with a community garden, which I think would be fantastic for that park. A lot of people in that neighborhood have the need for fresh and healthy food, and we have Victoria Village, the long-term care center right across the street, which I think would be a great way to get seniors out and active and involved in the community.
Speaking of seniors, do you think Ward 2 is friendly to seniors in terms of just navigating the downtown area, where sidewalks, where it's hard to do the ramp? There's very few ramps able for walkers, even wheelchairs.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of work to do to make it more accessible. For example, the sidewalks downtown, they're kind of crumbling away with interlocking brick, and there's huge chunks missing along different points in the downtown, and that's just not safe for a lot of people who have mobility issues. So I'd like to see us fix that and make it accessible for everyone, so everyone has a chance to get down and shop in our local businesses. I think transit is also a big piece of making our city accessible to seniors, but also people living with disabilities. Because our transit system right now isn't perfect. We have a long way to go, and I think we could look to cities like Kingston. That's where I went to university. They're doing a lot of really cool, creative things to drive investment in their transit system and bring up ridership and make it more appealing to take transit in their city. So I'd like to see us look to other cities, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Look to other great ideas around the world and improve our transit system so that, you know what, a lot of seniors, they don't drive anymore. And if it takes them 2 hours to get from the north end of Barrie to the south end on a bus, maybe they just won't go out, and that's not good for our health if we're isolated. You want to make sure that as you age, you stay involved in the community and active and in touch with your social connections. And I think we can do that by making sure people can actually move around the city in a safe way.
I remember a few years ago I was speaking to the mayor, Mayor Jeff. Yep. And I said to him, you know what would really be cool is cutting off downtown from Mulcaster to the 5 Points and doing a pedestrian mall. He said, well, it's part of a provincial highway going through there. But I'm thinking, I'm going to plug it because I think it's a great idea to have a pedestrian mall. And I even suggested, because they did it in Montreal, where they even had sort of a tubular covering between one building to the next. Didn't prevent snow from coming through, but then they had heaters. It was so cool, and it encouraged so many restaurants in that area. It'd be so cool to park your car somewhere, or get off a bus somewhere and be able to have this whole pedestrian mall with Heritage Park now, and the Meridian Square is there and everything else. So that's my vision, and I'm plugging it, and I'm going to hound you when you get in to push that. But isn't that something like that brings Barrie not just as a gateway to cottage country, but actually a destination, because the beautiful waterfront
Yeah, I love those types of ideas, closing off the street to car traffic and making it a pedestrian area. I'm not sure if we're quite there yet for all of Dunlop Street, maybe a section of Dunlop Street. And people are hesitant because they think, oh, if I can't park right out front of a business, it's going to hurt the business, which actually, if we look at other cities that have done this, it's the opposite. Business actually thrives because if you're out walking, you're more likely to stop in a store you wouldn't have normally stopped in just because you passed it on foot, and it's easier for you to stop in. So it actually can be a really good thing for business, and I think we just have to talk that through and see what that would exactly look like.
Because promenade days, it's a promenade days. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's amazing when you go downtown Barrie on promenade days and there's no car traffic. There's hundreds of people mingling and chatting, and I saw that in when I traveled with my boyfriend a few years ago. We were in Poland, in Krakow, and there was a huge. They have the largest town square in Europe is in Krakow.
Oh, wow.
Who would know?
Yeah.
I mean,
interesting.
But not just the businesses that surrounded the town square, but also the influx of people that came on bicycles. There were no cars. You had to leave your cars blocks away and walk there. Mm-hmm. It just had a sense of community, but also a sense of, wow, this is happening. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely, absolutely. I think we're moving in that direction with downtown Barrie, with the new Meridian Square. We finally have a really nice meeting place in the center of our city. So I think we're moving in that direction, but we got to keep it up and make sure that people still feel safe coming downtown, because we can build all the shiny things that we want, but if the surrounding area doesn't feel safe or isn't clean, or people are sleeping on street corners, then you can build all the shiny things you want, but it doesn't solve those problems. So I think we need to do both. We need to make sure we're looking at creative things like closing off the street or widening the sidewalks, which is a potential plan for downtown, but then also dealing with the social issues we have.
I like the I didn't like them at first, but I kind of like in the summertime where they have the bars and they have an outcropping from the bar where they have patio tables. That's really neat. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that, and I'm not trying to say that Barrie isn't a great city to live in. I love living in Barrie. I've lived here for 15 years. Yeah. From Montreal, so I'm a Montrealer at heart. But I love that whole sense of community. Sure. And to me, building a not just a safe environment, yes, but a welcoming one, yeah, where you feel that you can meet people at street level and have a sense of community, really enhances people's notion of, it's a great place to live, but they can also see some of the issues firsthand.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said a meeting place. That's what our downtown should be, and we should design it in a way that encourages those types of chance encounters and where you actually talk to your neighbors and build that sense of community. Yeah.
Instead of being on our iPhones talking to our neighbors, we could actually meet with them, because I noticed that if you look way back in history, a lot of the homes with the big front porches, that's what they were intended for. People would sit on their porch and people would walk by and they'd have this ability to communicate. And I'm not against, because I love Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat. I'm all for it, and emails. But you do lose that sense. And there is something invigorating. I know in downtown Toronto, sometimes walking down on Church Street has changed a lot. But where it's safe for the LGBT community as well as others to be able to hold hands and also some sign of affection, but just to be able to walk and have that feel is so invigorating.
Absolutely.
And I know that Barrie, there's a lot of my friends are coming up from Toronto and they're surprised at how that isn't happening here, and they think you're so close to Toronto. Yeah. But we're not Toronto.
Yeah, I think the problem is how we've built our city over the last couple of decades. We've primarily built the sprawling suburban neighborhoods and haven't really been doing smart growth. So we need to rethink how we grow as a city and start to concentrate that growth in the downtown and in the center of the city, in the existing boundaries of the city for environmental reasons, but also for that community, sense of community. When you're you know, pulling out of your garage in the morning to commute to Toronto, pulling in at night, closing the door behind you. You don't even talk to your neighbors. I think that's where we lose that sense of community in a lot of ways. We've built our neighborhoods to almost discourage that type of interaction that we need to build that sense of trust and community.
Do you see yourself being bringing that sense of influence to City Hall?
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
sense of community. I mean, you're talking about 6 new city councillors. Some are quite young. Yourself, as I think Sergio Morales is more or less in the same age bracket.
20 days younger.
I didn't want to go there.
20 days younger.
But he's another one that is a younger city councillor that is there, that is of your generation, not my generation, your generation. So that enthusiasm that you have today, I'd like to see it in a year from now and see if that enthusiasm is still there.
Absolutely. And
it probably will be, I think, from what I've heard. So in 2018, there was a huge Pride Festival in downtown Barrie at Heritage Park. And numbers were quite high, and it was exciting. We lobbied. We were part of a group that lobbied. I was part of a group that lobbied, the organization I work for Rainbow Sidewalk. And not to flaunt LGBTQ, but I know that TD Bank did a whole thing, the rainbow colors on TD Bank, but TD does it. It was in Barrie last year. It goes from one city to the next. And I know I went into Scotiabank and said, hey, across the street you've got the rainbow colors on the TD Bank. What are you doing? And they said, well, yeah. So we gave them 2 flags, a trans flag and a rainbow flag. And they flew them. We said, well, you should fly them in the front. No, they flew them. They didn't fly them. They were self-standing in sort of in the back and away from everything. And I said, that doesn't. So do you think this year we might get a rainbow sidewalk? You'll be in City Council.
I hope so. I think it's a great initiative. It's just a way to raise awareness and you know, make sure people realize that our community is accepting and open and loving. So I would love to see us do that. It's an easy thing to do. Maybe we could fundraise for it and
it's a moneymaker. That Pride Festival. I mean, it was 3 days.
Sure.
So people do come from outside of Barrie, straight, gay, trans, bi, whatever. They come because and the weather, of course, helps. And last year in June, the weather was really good.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And the city was very favorable to having it. And I hope something comes of it. I haven't heard what's happening in 2019, but I know that's one of the things. But there's something that's happening in Ward 2 that does attract provincial attention anyway, because folks come from, I know folks came from Sudbury, even from Thunder Bay, up from Toronto. It's a great place, and it's a great way to showcase the city. Where the location is awesome.
Absolutely.
So you'd be for that, would you?
I would absolutely, yeah.
You heard it on with Gerry. That we're going to be looking for that rainbow sidewalk.
Absolutely, let's do it.
Yeah, you really?
Let's do it, yeah.
Good. So just because I know we're coming close to the end of the interview, and I hate to say it, but I just so enjoy the freshness that you bring, but also the fact that within the LGBT community, there are services in town, like the Gilbert Center, like Busby, CMHA, which CMHA is probably, if I'm correct, is the only business in town flying the rainbow flag.
Okay. Yeah.
And they're on 21 Simcoe Street. They're flying the rainbow flag. We have, the Gilbert Center has it indoors. And I know that Barrie by the Bay will fly the rainbow flag and the trans flag, because Trans Day Remembrance is coming up on November 20th, which we're doing something at City Hall, and I know you're going to be there.
Oh, for sure.
And the trans flag is going to be flying. You also mentioned at the town hall meeting prior to the October 22nd election that you were concerned about a lot of issues. Trans was one of them. And you mentioned that, and I was kind of, wow, this is really like proactive. He's coming out with something, hasn't been asked, but then so your focal point as a city councillor somewhat will be influenced by your connection to the LGBTQ community, I'm thinking.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a critical part of who I am and where I come from politically, for sure. For sure, it's always going to be an influence, and we still do have a lot of work to do in Barrie to make sure that everyone feels safe and comfortable and loved. And I think the trans community, especially, we have a lot of work to do to make sure that people have access to the services that they need. I know trans people are more likely to be homeless and living in poverty, and that's unacceptable. So we need to do a lot more to address that.
I know on November 20th there's going to be a flag raising at City Hall, and then there's a march through part of the downtown going to a Drawers on Toronto Street and Dunlop, where there's going to be like a vigil going on. But that's a community, the trans community is a community that has long been misunderstood. They don't understand what like it's a guy dressed as a girl, it's a girl dressed as a guy. I know that businesses sometimes don't appreciate some of the trans folks coming in because they think, I have a friend of mine who was arrested in Midland because she was in shopping and the business owner said, there's some guy in my store dressed as a woman looking at lingerie. So the police picked her up, drove around the block and basically put the fear of the, like you need to curb where you shop. So I'm hoping that, I haven't heard that happening in Barrie, but I hope that businesses in Barrie through education and through city councillors to be elect like yourself once you're in, can bring that piece to city council and start to educate some of the city councillors and others who don't really understand. Yeah. Do you think that that's part of your role as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. To be a progressive voice on council and bring that leadership on certain issues to council, for sure. But I think we just need to look to the work of the groups and services and agencies in the city that are already doing that hard work, and the individuals as well with lived experience who are already doing that hard work, and elevate their voices as well. I think that's critical, is hearing from people with the lived experience, and elevating their voices and their stories.
Yeah, because part of community is community. And it's not just people that look like you, look like me, think like me, and have white privilege, for example, or pretty privilege, which is another one I heard recently. You heard that one?
I have
pretty
heard that.
Privilege, and I thought, pretty privilege, which is, makes sense. It sort of does isolate a larger segment. And part of, I think, of making Ward 2, from my perspective anyway, is that inclusivity that you bring to the ward, but also the fact that you're in touch with your constituents, because I think you told me you knocked on just about every door in Ward 2.
Yeah, and some twice, some even 3 times. So I think those face-to-face interactions, actually getting out and talking to people, is critical these days, with politics being so divisive and such a mess. I think the cure is to get out and meet our neighbors and meet people face to face, instead of just always hiding behind a keyboard. You can't always have those productive conversations behind a keyboard. You gotta do it face to face.
And I understand through the grapevine, which is your grapevine to my grapevine, that you're going to have a home office, but that you're planning on being like a hands-on city council. You're going to be in the community daily, visible, which I think is crucial, and I applaud you for it, because I'm thinking, I know in Ward 8 who it was. I think it was Jim Harris got elected. I don't know where he lives. I don't know even, I know what he looks like only through posters, but now I don't know what he looks like. To be a city council, but to actually be visible and not be signed behind some office door.
That's kind of just also how I live my life too.
So
like
cool.
I live in downtown Barrie. I go out for coffee at Casa Cappuccino or Homestead almost every day. So I'm out in the community already, walking the streets and talking to people. So that's just how I live my life, and that's just how I'll be as a councillor, because that's who I am.
I think it's so cool though to be able to to walk into Cafe or Bohemia or any of the other downtown spot, or just to see you downtown walking around. I know when I walk downtown sometimes, in fact when I did the intro to this show, I was at City Hall and the mayor was walking by and I went, oh, there's the mayor. Like oh, there's the mayor.
Yeah.
Like, hello, yeah, I'm the mayor. You know, and I said, do you want to be part of this intro? I'm having Keenan Allen on the show.
That's what I love about municipal politics is your representatives can be very accessible and just right there for you to talk to and engage with, and I think that's crucial.
It's so much more, not just personal, but so much more meaningful than an email to, you know, the mayor, City of Barrie, or Councillor Aylwin at cityhall.ca, whatever that email address is going to be, or whatever phone number that's going to be. I remember somebody a few years ago told me, oh, you know, when I was in university, we actually had to write an English essay. And penmanship was part of it, and how we spelt and how we punctuated and all this. And just recently I had a colleague do a report, and I looked at it, and we have spell check. Oh yeah, right. The writing was atrocious. So, and people lost the ability to write. And I think seeing a city councillor in the downtown area like yourself, being able to talk to them is going to encourage us to get away from the phone, get away from emails, and actually meet somebody in eye contact and actually talk to them and actually build that relationship. And I think it's crucial. So kudos to you. I don't know what it's going to be like February the 3rd when it's 20 below. You'll be in a Parker.
Still go out for coffee every morning. So it's nice and cozy in those coffee shops down there. So you'll still see me around.
But I think it's an encouragement, but it's also indicative of a new generation of politician that actually is not afraid to stand in front of constituents and actually meet them face to face and talk to them about the real hard issues, because there are some hard issues, as we've been talking about, and that so much of that is lacking. I understand sometimes it is lacking because of security reasons, or it's just not possible and you don't feel safe. But I think in Barrie, so far, I don't know if that's going to be an issue for you,
definitely not.
For anybody else.
No, come and if you see me out in town and want to come over and ask a question or talk to me, don't hesitate and come say hi. I'll always be available. So,
you shop downtown, you live downtown.
Yep.
Lots of people are upset because, or disappointed that there is no grocery stores in the downtown area. The one that was downtown on Mulcaster was a food-based IGA or Foodland. What's happening? Do you know? Just in closing this interview, like, do you see food coming downtown?
It's critical. We need a grocery store downtown, and I think as a city we need to do all we can to encourage a grocery store to come downtown. We have a space that was built for Sobeys. Unfortunately, Sobeys pulled out, but the space is just sitting there, empty.
Is that the one on Collier and Mulcaster?
Yeah, it's Collier and Mulcaster. So I'd like to see us do all we can to encourage and maybe incentivize a grocery store coming downtown, because there's a lot of seniors, a lot of young people who don't have a vehicle to go and pick up groceries at No Frills, which is quite the trek from downtown. And we have
the one on Blake Street?
Yeah, the one on Blake Street, or the one on Wellington. They're
there's one on Wellington.
Equal distance from the downtown.
Right.
Yeah, take your pick.
Yeah.
But I think with the amount of new people coming into downtown Barrie, it's something that we need to work on. It's just weird that we don't have a grocery store downtown. It's time.
Well, there's a few food places, but they're more specialty, like the cheese. There's a cheese store, I think. Or
there's
J'adore,
there's a health food store as well, which does have a lot of different groceries, but affordability is also a factor. We need to make sure that people across the board can afford healthy food.
What about you? How do you see yourself moving forward in the new year? Any New Year's resolutions? I know it's not that early.
I haven't thought that far ahead.
You haven't?
No resolutions yet, but I'm excited. I've got a lot of learning to do as the councillor. It's going to be a steep learning curve, but I'm excited for it, and then a lot of work to do over the next 4 years.
You don't seem to be intimidated by it.
I may not show it, but
Oh,
I am intimidated by it, but also excited. Yeah.
Are you getting asked a lot to go and speak already? You know, because you're new, you're younger.
Not so much yet. I
yeah.
mean, I'm going to a lot of events, not necessarily to speak, but yeah, going to a lot of different community events, which I love, meeting new people, seeing different organizations, what the work they're doing in the community. And yesterday I actually went and spoke to a class of grade 5s at Oakley Park Public School.
Wow.
In Ward 2.
That can be intimidating.
It was intimidating. I was more terrified speaking to the group of grade 5s than any political audience. But
Interesting.
they were awesome. They were so sweet, so nice, and really inquisitive too. They had really great questions.
Like what? What was the question they would ask?
Like what's my top priority for the city?
Really? Grade 5?
Yeah. Yeah, they were on the ball. They knew a lot about politics. They're actually today, that when we're filming this, they're going on a tour of City Hall to see how it works and see what the City Hall's like. Yeah, they're engaged. It's good to see teachers encouraging that at such a young age. So shout out to Mr. Welsh at Oakley Park.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I have grandsons, and my youngest grandson is 3 years old, and he already knows how to FaceTime me. And I'm saying to his mother, what? And they're very inquisitive. Good to know. So you'll probably get a lot of other invites then, now that we know. Where was it?
Oakley Park Public School.
Oakley Park Public School.
Yeah, it's Grove and Davidson. Yeah.
Good for you. Well, Keenan, all the best in 2019 and down the road. But it's 4-year term, or?
Yes, yeah,
4
years.
Term, so 4 years. You'll be coming out of this a different person, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
From it, and more engaging, and all the best.
Thank you so
in
much.
2019, and I hope you come back on the show at some time and tell us some of the exciting things that you've seen happen and you've made happen.
For sure.
So
I'd love to be back.
congratulations again.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for taking time from your schedule.
No problem.
And we look forward to seeing you on November 20th as Trans Day of Remembrance here at Barrie City Hall, with a wrap-up vigil at Drawers on Toronto and Malcassa. So thank you for tuning in. Next week, Sheridan Morgan's coming in. He's a gay guy in town, works for Edward James. He and his partner Chris just had twin baby girls. I'm going to talk about surrogacy in Canada, in Ontario, and here in Barrie. So we have lots of pictures, and I can tell you they're cute. So thank you for tuning in.